It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk on this really important conversation. As was mentioned, I'm Kelly O'Connell. I'm the Executive Vice President for On Its Axis. We're an innovation consulting firm. We historically partnered with venture-backed startups to help them with optimized growth and scale. And in 2018, we identified the necessity of this service for enterprise organizations. And so I bring an early career in mergers and acquisitions, mid-career experience as an executive for one of the largest global consulting firms, and experience coming from the role of the entrepreneur running a management and innovation consulting firm for both large and small organizations. I'll note, just a matter of course, since I am sharing this with a global audience, that my lens tends to be for US-based companies supporting global operations. I have worked with companies that are European-based, but all of the companies that I've worked with have had some footprint in North or South America. So that's the lens I'm bringing to the conversation. I also bring to the lens of the conversation my role as the founder and now board leader of a GuideStar Platinum community wellness organization, and I'm a nonprofit professional. So I have the lens of the for-profit and nonprofit sectors, and I'm a passionate advocate for people, sustainable regeneration, and for helping to accelerate opportunities for those that have been historically underserved. So that said, one caveat as I talk about finance, I am not an attorney, and I am not coming to this from the role of a financial planner. So any advice I give is coming from that professional experience I just shared, and is not coming from an advisory experience, and is not to be taken as financial advice. Okay, all of that out of the way, I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with you and really to share some experience around the exciting opportunity that we have as leaders. I know many of the people in the audience here are emerging leaders or future leaders, and that's an area I really enjoy speaking to and working with. And so I'm beginning to share a screen. You'll see a visual on the screen, which is really about the future of work. And I believe that those of you who have just entered the workplace or who will be entering the workplace in the future have an incredibly exciting opportunity ahead of you. My generation has had the opportunity to bridge essentially two industrial ages of the work. So from a historic context, work is typically driven by the demands of the people. So the way that we structure around work, while there are regional differences, is really driven by what we call consumer demand, or by how people get their innate needs met. So as we moved from sort of this hunter-gatherer culture to an industrial culture, it was driven by people's desire for consumption, to have easier access to basic needs. Then we moved into a knowledge age, and in that knowledge age, we were able to see that there's a value to skills, which allowed us to even optimize further our experience. And I believe those of you who are entering the workforce are entering in at the beginning of the innovation age. No doubt that throughout the last several days of discussions on this conversation, there have been people who've talked about the skills of resilience, of change agility, and about the role they play in the work and the landscape that we're experiencing. But my experience is that even outside of the impact, and it was certainly an incredible catalyst for change that occurred starting last March, even outside of the impact of COVID, we have probably for the last several years been in an emerging culture of a new age of work, which many theorists are calling the innovation age. This age is unique in several ways. What makes this age unique is that it is an inclusive age. So as I welcome you to this conversation, I'm going to ask each of you who are here to just write in the chat so I know where you're from in the world. but also as I welcome you in, this is an age that recognizes the value that individual contributors, that the unique needs of the customer have on the products we're building. It's also an age where we're most interconnected, where the experience of one country, wherever that is in the world, of one community, wherever that is in the world, of one city, of one group of people, impacts the demands of the workplace. This age, as we've been experiencing it, is called the hustle culture, the grind culture, but it's been driven by a factor of technology. It's been driven by the ability of the internet to connect people across the globe instantly, to connect and share experiences. And as we move from the Internet 2.0 to Internet 3.0, as we move from dominant centralized financial culture into decentralized financial culture, we're beginning to see the impact that this has on the way we work. A really easy example of this is the role that e-commerce has played on the retail industry. So when I was in school and in kind of elementary and secondary school, one very fun thing that my cohort, my generation of people enjoyed doing was going to the mall. We went to the mall because that's where we had access to all of the pop culture items that we might think that we needed. We went to a mall because it was a central place to access data and information. But today, from my cell phone, I have access to goods from around the world. This has transformed the logistics industry, it's transformed the shipping industry, and it's made it possible for us to have consumer products delivered on demand, which brings up the second factor. So there's this transformational factor of technology that's been driving change, and the interconnected ease of accessing and understanding consumer insights across the globe. But the second piece is around growing awareness that we have finite energy and resources available to us in the world, and that packaging goods and then shipping them around the world and then displaying them in central locations where they're only seasonally available is a high energy cost, high global impact on the world. And that's very limiting in terms of the opportunity. So knowing that you're from really around the European market, one example here that is sort of a growing example that we've seen is the reemergence of a farmer's market culture, right? So looking at how do we get directly from the people who are producing goods to the people who are consuming those goods? And how do we take out this long kind of inflated cycle of consumer demand? And this has had an impact on the corporate environment. So if we look at this and I talk about this transformation of the way that we work in this innovation age, we're also going to this third piece is who holds the knowledge. So data, AI, and machine learning has taken the knowledge from just the enterprise organizations, and it's made it possible for a startup organization to have keen insights onto the needs of consumers around the world. So just to summarize, there's really been three key catalysts around this transformation from the knowledge age to the innovation age, and that's technology driving the change. That's the globalization that's driving the change, this kind of global awareness of our shared resources and the importance of protecting those shared resources. And then this additional element of consumers understanding and really understanding the data of consumer insights, letting a mom and pop business, a startup in a small rural community in India or a small village in Africa directly serve the needs of a consumer in Bronx, New York. This is transformational, and this is changing the way that big business is thinking about how to structure and deliver goods to the market. They know and are fearing the sort of fourth element driving the innovation age is that enterprise organizations that have long been secure in their financial resiliency are starting to fear disruption from small and regional players. And they're getting smart about the need to consider innovation, to consider the impact of their goods on the world, and to consider how they're serving the needs of customers. So in other words, if you can't tell my passion around this, it is a very exciting time to be entering and thinking about the workforce. As I talk with you today, I want to just share a bias that I have going through this conversation. Not all people will hold my position on this. There are many people who disagree that we're transforming into innovation. And so a bias in the information I'm sharing with you is that I believe innovators are leaders. I believe that companies that embrace inclusion, that embrace sustainable practices, that prioritize consumer insights and internal employee experience, and embrace innovation through inclusion will be more optimally successful. I believe that's the future of work. Harvard and The Economist are behind me with incredible data that's supporting this assertion, but I do want to recognize that not all people feel the same way that I do. So my understanding here is that innovative workforce is the workforce of the future. My understanding is that inclusive workforce is the workforce of the future, and that consumer-led brands that understand that we have a finite amount of resources on the planet are going to be optimized for success in the future. And that's the lens I bring to today's conversation. I'll cover this very quickly with the common areas that really relate to this idea. The market landscape, the transformation we were just talking about, the role funding plays on it, and how this vision and planning you should consider as you're thinking about your career track and how to move forward. So this market landscape is global, it's inclusive and diverse, and the market landscape is shifting. And so as we think about this market landscape, it may feel really complex and crowded, but it's really not. It's really going to be driven by people. And it always has been, from early community to the moment we're in today. The value of a commodity is driven by the consumer need that is going to consume it. So I just really want you to know that navigating this change is really about listening and observing. I believe that change agility is equal to innovation and equal to growth, that there is no fixed landscape that you're going to be entering into. There isn't a path that's going to be fixed or a linear narrative about how to achieve success. And I believe that within your opportunity to transform, not just me, innovation theorists in general believe that you can innovate on 4 horizons. For those of you who have been listening in and you're overwhelmed by the conversation that I'm having about disruptive innovation and it feels scary, then maybe your role is to focus your career path around continuous improvement, finding ways to take the products and the landscapes in existing enterprise organizations and make them incrementally better. Maybe it's about figuring out ways to take an existing product and find a new market to serve, to find a new way to explore how to deliver that in a better way. And that's an adjacent innovation. Or maybe you're going for a moonshot and you're trying to figure out, how do I transform business and just completely say the way that businesses have been thinking about the problem are wrong, and we want to think about it differently. So as you think about how you'll create an opportunity in the workplace, it happens in these 4 phases, from really working on existing problems to make them better, to finding new ways to take that problem to market, to finding new markets to serve with that, or to say we've been thinking about the problem completely wrong and we just need to approach it entirely in a new way. Once you figure out which one of these buckets excites you, you can really begin to think more transformationally about how to work in the workplace. Do I want to start in an enterprise organization? Do I want to work for a nonprofit? Do I want to work for a think tank? Do I want to work for a startup? Or do I want to go on my own and launch a business? And as we think about this, regardless of which of these segments that you're thinking about stepping into, I believe that the future workforce needs a few elements at the center of this innovation age. It means a comfort level with change agility, which is recognizing that a fixed mindset or a learn everything first mindset of the knowledge age needs to begin to shift. This is not to say that education isn't important. I'm deeply involved and committed to education, but I believe that how we educate needs to shift. I believe that you no longer just need to build and develop skills around hard skills, but you need to recognize that any skills you develop will need to shift over time in order to be able to fully be an optimized participant in this innovation culture. This will allow for your professional growth, and it will allow for the growth of the organizations that you engage in. To do this, I believe there are a few things that you can adopt. An experimentation culture in the workforces we're working in, and an experimentation culture as a person. I like to call this the fail forward mindset. When we fail forward, when we create a safe to try opportunity, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to take chances, and these chances create learning and innovation. A future focus, meaning we can't be overly committed to determining success based on what we've historically been able to predict. The future workforce will be able to optimize their growth by thinking about not just what lessons have I learned, but what chances can I take based on AI, based on those lessons to think about the problem in new and different ways. We do this not by constantly changing, but by maintaining a compelling vision, key values that drive our focus. For me, people at the center, sustainability and regeneration of our globe, and the interconnected nature and needs of people drive this. And then we need to have collaborative communication. We need creative collaboration across the neurodiversities of the people who work in our workplace. Inclusion optimizes our ability to achieve and succeed. These are the things I believe we need to embrace as a people and embrace as culture. Clarity around this is key, but we'll do this in a very dark place. So today it may feel murky, but as we gain insights, we gain clarity that allows us to propel forward. This period we're in of innovation shift from knowledge to innovation and experimentation is a gray area, but the future ahead, I believe, is a very bright area led by the people who are on this call and who may listen in the future. The leaders of tomorrow will help us to create vision and structure around how we should be approaching this change. That said, the leaders of tomorrow will be impacted by the funding structures of today. Historically, business opportunities are disproportionately given to people who already hold wealth. We are beginning to see an impact investment culture, beginning to see an inclusion investment culture, and a sustainable investment culture that's innovating in the funding of tomorrow. VC funding is no longer the only path to creative innovation. It's no longer the only path to an enterprise organization scaling or to a startup or an idea stage company scaling. We have bootstrapping, which again has been historically focused around people who had the wealth or have a community of people of wealth, but crowdfunding and the increasing role that blockchain and cryptocurrency technology is playing in creating global wealth is shifting how we work. There's creative innovation around bank loans and revenue and creative financing for e-commerce and startup companies. And there are creative venture paths that companies can now take to be able to gain access to innovation. And enterprise organizations themselves, the global 2,000 companies that I have a chance to partner with, are creating foundations within their teams They're creating enterprise corporate social responsibility divisions, venture segments. They're offering grant funding, and they're offering angel funding and microloans to create an opportunity for idea stage founders and growth stage founders to be able to generate a path to success that embraces this innovation culture. The startup life cycle has historically operated from a pre-seed to public stage. This can be very confusing. This Minty Mint, I have no connection to. I'm not getting any kickbacks from Minty Mint. I'm not on their board, but I think that they've done a really outstanding job of helping those of you who are thinking, I'd like to do this on my own, to understand the startup life cycle and to understand how venture, which is the most common path for startup stage founders to be able to achieve scalable and global impact success, to understand how it works. And I personally believe that the more we can help people who haven't historically had access, women have historically only received less than 4% of global venture funding. The underrepresented community, BIPOC and Latinx, have historically received under 3% of global funding. This needs to change. I believe it fundamentally needs to be changed. And I believe it starts with helping to educate and help you as future leaders understand the path to achieve this. So if you're a future leader thinking about that disruptive stage of innovation, thinking, I want to start my path as a startup, as an impact startup founder, please connect with me. I'm Kelly O'Connell on LinkedIn. I'm Kelly O Cares on Twitter. I'm passionate about helping you achieve success and bringing an understanding of this space to those of you who haven't historically had access to it. That said, planning for success is also acknowledging that you can't step from where you are to being a global innovator without collaborating, without learning, without educating, without connecting to other people. You have to have your compelling vision. I often give an example to those career coach participants that I work with, those mid-career leaders, those mid-level managers. These are critical leaders that are going to shape the shifting change of the organizations that currently have the wealth from that knowledge age to the innovation age, from the centralized focus on quarterly shares and profit and revenue return to a blended vision of impact and opportunity, of purpose and profit. These leaders, I share that you need to have 3 legs to your stool. You need to have your personal vision, your awareness of what it takes to create a sustainable company, which does mean yielding returns. There has to be a place for profit and purpose for you to have impact at scale. And you can't go it alone. You have to have communication and collaboration. You have to know how these 3 legs work together to create opportunities and work together to create optimized opportunities for scaling success. That was a lot of information, and I'm not sure if there's an opportunity for questions or the time that I was given to be able to speak today. So I'll open it up if there are any questions to anybody who may be listening in live.
We've got a couple of questions come through from some students about really the world of entrepreneurship, but I suspect those are big questions to answer. So I'm going to ask if Kelly could join us over on the Best Connect platform, because I think that's a better place to pick up some of these longer conversations. But I think one of the things that we've been asking all of our speakers across the week is if you could give some advice to your younger self, what might that be?
Take chances, believe in yourself. That would absolutely be my discussion. So I was raised poor in America. I grew up in the projects. I grew up with a single mom. I'm the oldest child of immigrant American parents, of a parent and grandparents. And I would say I took a very linear path. I spent many years doing what I thought was the right direction for success. I have multiple degrees. I spent many years in corporate, putting sort of my personal values to the side for an idea that I needed to create wealth in a very traditional way. So to anybody listening, I would say, take a chance on yourself. Give yourself the opportunity to create the world that you want to live in and that you want other people to live in.